whole gamut of contentious issues which have emerged. And the fact that OECD has really done tremendous amount of work, a lot of time has gone into it, a lot of consensus also so far as developing countries are concerned. And only a couple of tax jurisdictions have little different views on the whole issue, and probably that delayed it. So how do you look at, sir, the entire basket of issues?
Shailendra, I think if we look at the blueprint that OECD has released recently, you are absolutely right, and other my co-panelists have also touched upon this. This clearly shows the amount of work that has undergone, and we must compliment OECD Secretariat and all other countries, because there are a lot of consensus have been arrived at, and but there are still open issues, and there are issues which are very significant. I will just try to explain them. And while trying to do that, it is also appropriate to look at what UN has suggested, but we must be very clear that UN has started his work right now, while OECD is doing work for last many years, and therefore OECD work is at a very matured stage, while UN work is at a very starting stage. And the second very important difference between two work is that UN is not government bodies. So the committee which is there, it is committee of experts where individuals represent themselves. They don't represent a country. So any solution which is suggested by UN committee of expert may not have the backing of their country, and therefore inclusive framework is the better implemented by all the countries. So these are the basic difference. But why I have brought UN here in the picture, because there is something which UN has suggested, which probably could influence OECD work. Although, as I said earlier, that UN work is at a very initial stage. So many people, when they say that OECD work is quite complex, while UN suggestion is a very simple solution, I probably will not agree to that, because OECD work is complex because they have done a lot of work. Now, if you look at UN proposal, they still have to carry out that work which OECD has already carried out. Their first suggestion is gross basis of taxation. Now, gross basis of taxation is something we find it difficult for countries and businesses to accept. Those discussions also took place in the inclusive framework. But then there is another practical problem in UN proposal. How do you implement gross basis of taxation? Withholding tax on gross basis. How do you implement that? Because most of digital economy is consumer based. It is business to consumer. It is not B2B, it is B2C, most of them. How do you expect a consumer to withhold taxes while making payment to a digital company? These are the issues where UN still have to work, and we will see how they come out with a solution. That is something which is going to become a complex issue. And then when UN talk about net profit taxation, also giving an option to the digital company to get tax on net profit basis, this is where it will get very close to OECD recommendations, which is net profit based. And that is where the more complex complications will start. Because what tax base you will take for calculating net profit margin, whether you go with profit before tax, whether you go for gap, and whether you go for book profit or tax profit, if you go for book profit, what tax adjustment you make, so all this, and how do you source the revenue? Because in digital taxation, this is a very important point, that if I am watching an ad which is produced by some other country, and paid by some other country, whether that revenue should go to those countries or whether revenue should come to India. OECD has done a tremendous work on this sourcing rule. UN still have to do. So once you go for net basis of taxation, and even for gross basis taxation, this sourcing will have to work, still have to be done. So what I'm trying to say is that some of the complication which is in OECD model is natural. Once you try to bring out a proposal which is not going to create a problem, which is going to be acceptable to everyone, which is very clear, does not lead to litigation, then probably you have to come out with all these steps which OECD has rightly come out with. And therefore, it has become complicated. But why I brought this issue here is that there is something which is very significant in UN proposal. And that is when they suggested net basis of taxation, they have given just one number that they, let's say 30%. I mean, this number could be anything, but let's say the number that they have given is that 30%. If MNC has a revenue from India of 100 rupees, then straight away you say that 30 rupees is basically because of the value that he is driving from India. And that on that you apply the net profit margin of the MNCs. So that is a very simple proposal. Now the question is, I mean, something I want to draw it here. In contrast to this, OECD has a very complicated proposal. And that is, they say first we must have a profitability threshold. And that profitability threshold will separate routine profit from non-routine profit. So what suggestion in the blueprint is that routine profit should not be shared with market jurisdiction. And it is only non-routine profit which should be shared with market jurisdiction. So that is one very significant suggestion which is there. But developing countries, most of the countries do not agree with this. In fact, that is also noted in the blueprint that it is an open issue, because developing countries feel that why should we get a share of routine profit? Because we should also get a share of routine profit. So that is something which is still an open issue. OECD has admitted that this is an open issue. So this is where, if you recall that last year in March, when OECD had submitted a public document for public discussion, Johnson & Johnson had given a proposal. So that Johnson & Johnson proposal is something that UN proposal is based upon. So the basic difference between Johnson & Johnson proposal and what OECD has recommended right now is that whether market jurisdiction should get a share of routine profit. And that is something which is critical to arrive at a consensus. Because if you agree that yes, market jurisdiction should also get a share of routine profit, because it does not matter. You know, the whole concept of digital taxation, the blueprint which has been published by OECD, based itself on the concept that MNCs, they participate in the economic life of market jurisdiction in a very sustained and significant manner. So the question is, if I am earning profit at 9%, does it mean I am not participating in a significant and sustained manner? And just because my net profit margin rises to 11%, then I'm participating in a significant and sustained manner. You know, how do we justify such kind of a proposition? So that is something, you know, developing country wants, that they should also get a share of routine profit. Now, if you agree that they should get a share of routine profit, then all the system of profit allocation that has been suggested in the blueprint, that there should be first profitability